Do you want the truth about your relationship? Then take the leash off. Somewhere between your first step and your dog's, something is missing. You speak, he listens, or only pretends to. You give commands, he responds, sometimes. But have you ever asked yourself, is he truly with you or merely beside you? Between human and dog lies a silence most people never notice, hidden behind leashes, routines, and distraction. But when the leash falls away, that silence begins to speak. And what it says can shake you to your core. This isn't about training. It's about who you are when nothing holds you together but trust. Stay with me. Keep listening. This goes deep.
Soul of a Dog, Mirror of a Man.
A podcast inspired by the book with the same name, written by Andreas Wojtaszek.
Picture this forest path. Old trees whisper in the wind. Sunlight dances in golden patches across the ground. Birds everywhere are singing their melodies, a hidden orchestra of nature. And somewhere, a branch snaps under the weight of time. In the middle of it, a person with a dog on a leash. The gaze is lowered, trapped in the cold, glaring rectangle in her hand that swallows the world. The thumb swipes, a mechanical motion turned into addiction. Beside her walks her dog, a shadow on 4 legs, unseen, unheard, simply dragged along. Sometimes a podcast whispers in the person's ears, a foreign presence slipping into her mind and telling her stories, while real life, the only being truly there, walking at her side, remains silent. The dog who hears her breath, feels the stride, smells the mood, yet gets no reply. No glance, no smile, no, "Do you see this too?" And then there's the other pair. 2 people laughing, talking, gesturing as if nothing were more important, busy only with themselves. A dog walks between them too, invisible like a ghost. He senses it. I'm not meant here. He sniffs the ferns, listens to birds, sees the world in all its small wonders. Yet no one asks him. No one truly sees him. He's there, yet not meant. While the people drift off into their thoughts, the dog is left alone in a walk that isn't one. What began as a shared walk becomes the saddest form of loneliness. Close together, and yet infinitely far apart. The dog waits, for a glance, for a word, for the feeling of mattering. Instead, he just keeps going, ever on the leash, compelled and alone. The one who cannot speak, cannot demand, but can feel, is lost. Why is it so easy to forget the dog? Because the leash turns him into a mute companion. It gives the person a deceptive sense of safety, as if everything were fine as long as the dog is physically there. The leash replaces attention with control. It says, you don't have to look. You don't have to feel. You don't have to truly be present, because he can't leave anyway. The dog becomes an appendage, an obligation, a living accessory mindlessly towed along. But the leash is not a bond of connection. It's only a rope of convenience. It allows the human to switch off because the dog is forced to follow. No joyful bounding after you, no nudging invitation, no searching look. Instead, quiet resignation. The tragedy? The person thinks they did everything right. The dog is with them after all. But in truth, They have fulfilled a duty, not a relationship. The leash makes it easy to forget that a dog needs more than a body beside him. He needs a human who is truly there. As long as the rope is taut, the person believes it's enough. And the dog? He endures it because he has no choice. At the side of someone whose head is off in another world. One soul, obedient, loyal, and alone. Dogs live in relationships, not in motion. They do not follow the path, they follow their human's heart. And when that human's mind is somewhere else, the dog has no choice but to walk alone. Without connection, without echo, without the feeling of being truly seen. That is not a walk. That is loneliness on a leash. And now comes something completely crazy. Something that might make you shake your head at first. But stay with me a moment. Imagine this. You simply leave the leash at home. You don't wrap it around your wrist, don't stuff it in your jacket pocket, don't clip it to your belt loop as a backup. You just don't take it. And then you set out. The whole walk through the forest, no safety line, no rope between you, no emergency brake. Just you and your dog. Sounds insane? Maybe. But it could be the beginning of something you never thought possible. Not as a game, not as a test, as a decision. Because today is the moment you find out what truly connects you. Today, you won't take anything away from your dog. You'll give him something. Freedom of choice, space, the chance to choose you. And you'll give yourself what you've avoided for far too long. Responsibility. Not for the command you give, but for the meaning behind it. Stop. Do not go any further. Please turn this podcast off right now if you're planning to do exactly that tomorrow, without having intensively trained off-leash work grounded in real connection between you and your dog. This is truly only a thought experiment, not instructions. This podcast is not a free pass, but an invitation. An invitation to grasp what the leash really is. Not a tool for the dog, but a bandage for you. It soothes your guilty conscience when you're unfocused or lazy. It protects you from bearing consequences. It gives you the feeling of control, where in truth, there is no connection to your dog. The leash is rarely an expression of leadership. It is often a symbol of your insecurity. If you've understood that, you may listen on. Not to change something tomorrow, but to recognize today what you've been overlooking. Ready? You close your front door behind you. Without a leash. No carabiner, no grab for safety, no strip of nylon between you to save you from the mistakes you otherwise make. No, I can still intervene. No, in an emergency I'll just hold him. There are no excuses today. No push-button correction. Only you, only your dog, and all that's between. Right here is where it's decided whether you are truly connected. Because only when the leash is gone does it show whether something else is holding you. Something invisible, something real. And if there's nothing there, then it's time to build it. You start walking, step by step. And every one of those steps echoes louder inside you than all those you took with a leash. Because you feel you're being watched. Not by passers-by, not by other dog owners, by your dog. His eyes are like a seismograph. They register every ripple in your body, every uncertainty, every distraction. Every thought not in the here and now flickers in his behavior like a vibrating needle on paper. You can't fool him. Not today. not without a leash. And as you walk, you begin to grasp. The leash was never for the dog. It was for you. You remember all the times you thought, if he's on the leash, everything's fine. And it was fine, but not honest. Because you didn't lead, you held. You weren't an anchor, you were a rubber band. And now that this band is gone, you realize how little real hold you gave. Not physically, emotionally, communicatively, internally. There's an intersection ahead. Left goes to the park, right to the street. You see your dog twitch for a second, a hint of tension in his stride. In the past, you would have simply guided him across on the leash, never noticing he actually had something else in mind. Today, you see it, you feel it, and you must choose. Do you lead or do you wait? You say nothing. You breathe evenly. You stay on course. And your dog looks at you, only briefly, but long enough to tell you, I understood you. I'll follow. This moment is small, but it carries a truth greater than any training session, because it's not staged, it's real, and because it shows you what true free following means. Not that your dog does what you want, but that he wants to, because you want it. You walk on. The wind carries the smell of damp leaves across the path. It's the first time you notice it. A cyclist approaches. Your dog perks his ears. Before, you would have given a quick leash tug to bring him to you. But today, there's nothing to tug. You notice how your body has changed. No pulling, no jerking. All you have left is presence. A single, clear thought your dog can read in your eyes. Stay with me. And he does. In this moment, you begin to understand how much you've been taking off your dog's shoulders and how little you've trusted him. You controlled because you didn't trust, and you didn't trust because you didn't trust yourself. You were unclear, inexact, inattentive. You were with everything else except him. And now you realize how mercilessly honest this off-leash freedom is. It won't let you dodge. It shows you whether you think ahead, anticipate, act before it's necessary, or whether you're always lagging behind. Behind your dog, behind yourself, behind what leadership truly means. Free following is not a test for your dog. It is a character test for you. You don't learn how to make your dog stay with you. You learn what it means to be someone worth staying with. A dog ultimately follows no command. A dog follows a personality, a presence, a security that doesn't have to be loud, but must be unmistakable. And that security doesn't arise from words. It arises from discipline, from self-control, from inner clarity, and from your willingness to admit mistakes without covering them up. Don't kid yourself. Your dog will make mistakes. He'll ignore your heel command, get distracted. But what matters isn't whether he errs. What matters is how you respond. Whether you get angry, whether you get loud, whether your ego is bruised because he embarrassed you, or whether you stay calm, composed, wordless, ready to take responsibility, not for his mistake, but for the situation in which it could happen at all. Because every drifting away is an echo of your inattention. You weren't with him, not in that moment, and he allowed himself not to be either. You walk calmly toward him. Say nothing. Go and pick him up. Not with a wagging finger, not with an angry, "That's enough." You go over, take him gently by the collar, bring him back to the spot where he should have been. And only then, when he's with you again, you give the heel command once more. Clear, firm, not annoyed, not uncertain, simply decided. And you walk on. No drama, no commentary. Because you know, anything else would only confuse him. It would turn a clear correction into an emotional muddle. And that is the difference between leadership and reaction. Work like this and your dog will change, not because you're drilling him, but because you give him security, because you give him something to orient himself by. And that doesn't begin with him. It always begins with you. You start talking less, not because you have less to say, but because you've learned that your presence speaks louder than any word. You begin to move more deliberately. No jerky gestures, no unconscious signals. You become clearer, more distinct, unambiguous. Not for the dog, for you. And then it happens. You walk side by side, without leash, without words, without uncertainty. And you realize it's no longer a technique. It's a relationship. One built on respect, on trust, on real communication. Not one that's visible from the outside, one that works from within. And that is the core. Free following is not a training goal. It is the expression of an inner stance, a willingness to question yourself, to discipline yourself, to place yourself at the center of responsibility, not out of vanity, but out of care. You don't lead because you want power. You lead because your dog needs you. Not as a handler of a leash, but as reliability made person. You'll notice that through this form of leadership, you yourself become calmer. You stop constantly anticipating what might go wrong. Instead, you begin to stay in the present, with your dog, with yourself, in this moment. It's as if the outside world grows quieter so you can hear your inside better and become clearer through it. Every glance your dog casts at you becomes feedback. No longer, what am I allowed to do? But, what do you truly want? And suddenly, you begin to notice how finely dogs communicate when we stop drowning them out. You notice that a slight twitch of the tail, a brief side glance, a minutely delayed step are hints, clues to how safe your dog feels, how much he needs you right now, or how much you're turning your back on him because you're once again too focused on the outside, on the next goal, on others, on your expectations. And this is the power of free following. It demands you observe yourself constantly, not to criticize, but to sharpen, to train your perception, to become someone a dog can rely on, without needing a correction every time. Because corrections are no substitute for leadership. They are merely the reaction to a missed chance to be present in time. This story isn't a fairy tale. It happens every day, wherever people are ready to give up control in order to take on true responsibility. Control holds tight. Responsibility carries. Control forces. Responsibility leads. And that's precisely why you don't need a leash when you're ready to truly take your place. But that takes work on you, not on your dog. It requires that you use your voice consciously, that you learn how your body language works, that you stop firing commands like cannon shots in the vague hope they hit the mark. Your dog is no soldier. He is a mirror. And what you put in comes back, distorted or clear, depending on how you are. Does your dog rely on you, and have you become their safe place? Share your experience in the comments and tell us what changes between you and your dog when the leash comes off. Because a dog who doesn't follow often has a human who doesn't lead. Not because they don't want to, but because they don't dare. Because they fear seeming too strict, or too quiet, or too controlling. But you know what? Dogs don't need charmers. They need clarity, honesty, consistency. No theatrics, no pleading, no show, just presence. And that always only begins with you. When your dog tests you, he isn't checking your rank, he's checking your stability. And if you wobble, he will lead. Not because he wants to, but because he has to. In a system without leadership, chaos arises, and chaos overwhelms. Your dog doesn't want to lead. He wants to follow, but only if you're ready to lead. Not with volume, with character. Leadership means making decisions before they're necessary. Not waiting until your dog bolts, but sensing beforehand that he's about to and responding before he does. Not with harshness, with clarity. A look from you, a short sound, a step, and your dog understands. I'm seen. I'm led. I can let go. Because that is the greatest gift you can give your dog. To show him you don't have to control the world. I'll do that. You may simply be safe with me. But for that, you must be willing to control yourself, your voice, your gestures, your thoughts, and yes, your emotions too. Because every time you get angry at your dog, a piece of connection is lost. Not because anger is wrong, but because it shows you're not with yourself right now, that you're reacting instead of leading, that you're hurt, and your dog has to pay for it. But your dog is not your lightning rod. He is your companion, your mirror. And if you want him calm and secure, you must be so first. Imagine you were a rock in the surf. Not cold, not rigid, but stable, reliable, quiet yet powerful. The rock doesn't shout at the waves. It just stands. And precisely because of that, the surf stops getting wilder, because it finds nothing to fight. Your dog is the surf. You are the rock. If you manage not to sway along, he will orient himself by you. And over time, he will grow calmer. But that doesn't happen overnight. It needs repetition. Stoic repetition. The same routine again and again. The same command. The same calm. Without annoyance. Without impatience. Your dog will learn what you mean. Not because you explain it 100 times, but because you do it the same way 100 times, and show him. Equally clear, equally present, equally calm. And suddenly, without you noticing, your relationship has changed. Not through big breakthroughs, through 1,000 small repetitions in which you took yourself seriously. And then others come. Those who ask you, "How did you do that? My dog never does that." And you won't have a quick answer. You won't say, "I used this trick," or "I found this one training book." You'll think. And maybe you'll say, "I started leading myself. And then, my dog believed me." Because that's what it's really about. Credibility. Not in your words, in your bearing, in what you radiate when you say nothing. when you simply are. And when you do speak, your dog will listen. Not because you're loud, but because you're real. Because you have something to say that matters. Free following is not a question of training level. It is a question of being human, of self-responsibility, of inner sincerity. And it demands everything of you. Not a little, not sometimes, always. Every step without a leash is a step into your own clarity. You will change. Not all at once, not like in the movies. Slowly, layer by layer. You'll notice you become calmer, not only with your dog, but with yourself. How you are clearer in other situations. How you look people in the eye instead of looking away. How you take responsibility even when no one is watching. Because what you learn with your dog, you carry into your life. The way you lead him mirrors how you carry yourself through life. And at some point, you begin to understand. You didn't just give your dog security. You found it within yourself. If this realization resonates with you, take a second to like this video so it can reach others who may be searching for the same clarity in their relationship with their dog. Because when you reach the point where you trust your dog to make choices and he still chooses you, then you'll know. You've arrived. Not at a destination, but in yourself. And that's why free following isn't the end of a training path. It's the beginning of another way of living. One shaped by clarity, by attentiveness, by genuine connection. One in which you no longer constantly think, what if he runs away now? But feel, he stays because he wants to. And yes, there will be days when everything goes wrong. When you're tired, unfocused, overwhelmed. When your dog breaks out again, shows old patterns, tests you. And you'll doubt yourself, him, your bond. But precisely then, shows how serious you are. Whether you fall back into the old, that's it, leash on, or whether you take the time to go back, collect him again, bring him back without a word, and give the command anew, with the same clarity as on day one. Not out of defiance, out of consistency. Because consistency is not coercion. It's a promise to your dog that you won't change just because it gets hard, that you stay, that you lead, that you hold, even when everything wobbles. And your dog will feel that. He'll sense that you don't waver, that you don't do things halfway, that you don't mean sit today and, well, if you like, tomorrow. And with every time you remain consistent, his trust grows deeper, firmer, quieter. You become someone dogs love to come to. Not because you have treats in your pocket, because you are at home in yourself. You are predictable, honest, not hard, not stubborn, but clear. And that is rare. And that is precious. And you will begin to see the world with different eyes. Suddenly, you notice how many dogs out there are without orientation. Not because they're poorly trained, but because their people are never truly with them. People who call constantly but never listen. Who chatter at their dogs but have no clarity in their body language. Who comment on every mistake immediately but are never willing to look at themselves. You will see them, and you will feel compassion. Not out of superiority, but because you know what it's like to feel lost in responsibility. What it's like to fail at your own impatience. What it's like to do things wrong and still start anew each day. Many dog owners are searching for answers to this problem because it runs deep in the human-dog relationship. If you want to help make the philosophy of this video visible to those who are still seeking answers, please subscribe to this channel. Because if you decide to strengthen the bond with your dog, then other dog owners might ask if you can help, if you have advice, if you can explain how to achieve such perfect free following. And you will hesitate. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know the answer isn't in a tip, not in a method, but in the willingness to change yourself, in the willingness to let go in order to lead, in the willingness to become quiet so something deeper can arise. And maybe you'll say, start with yourself. The dog follows you, or your unrest. And maybe, on one of those days, you'll stand with your dog at the edge of the woods. The sun flickers through the trees, the ground smells of moss and earth, and you feel this one thing: calm. Not because everything is perfect, but because nothing has to be perfect anymore. Because you've stopped fighting your dog and started walking with him. Because you stopped controlling him and started trusting him. And more than that, trusting yourself. Your dog stands a few steps away, looks at you. The wind plays in his coat. And in that look, there's no question anymore. No doubt, no weighing up. There is only yes. A yes to you. A yes to your connection. A yes to this shared path that was never rehearsed, but grew from your decisions, from your discipline, from your willingness to take yourself seriously. And you'll nod inwardly, not for him, for you, because you feel you've arrived, not somewhere out there, within yourself. You were willing to show up, willing to make mistakes, willing to learn. You didn't quit when it got hard. You didn't put on a costume to please your dog. You became real. And for that, he gave you his trust. Not blind trust, but conscious, tested, grown, real. You'll go home that day, the leash still in your pocket, but you'll know it has lost its place. Not because you'll never need it again, but because you found something better, something no hand can grasp, no carabiner can secure, no material can replace. A bond of clarity, of attachment, of true leadership. And that bond will never break, because that bond is you.
Soul of a Dog, Mirror of a Man. A podcast inspired by the book with the same name. You can find the book on Amazon.